Welcome to the Art of Feminine Negotiation podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Watson, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Lisa Stuart today. Welcome, Lisa. It is so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm so happy to be here and we finally can connect face to face over Zoom.
Absolutely. For all our listeners out there, I had the great pleasure of getting to meet up with Lisa on CLUBHOUSE, a platform I am enjoying. And as soon as I heard her speak a few times, I thought, I have got to get her on our podcast here. She always shows up with such grace and wisdom and fabulous insights. And I wanted to make sure to share those with you today. Lisa's a lawyer, a speaker, a writer, and she's the creator of the Drama Diet, which are definitely going to roll up our sleeves and talk about. And she empowers others and women in particular to navigate with fear, but lead with love, which I just love. And she's a mother of 3, and get this, ages 23, 21, and 4. So we got a nice big break there. And she's a very successful personal injury attorney and also advocates for self-love. So Lisa, as an attorney myself, I so love that you're able to juggle a successful practice while also focusing on living and negotiating, I guess you'd say, your best life. So tell us how you came to that place.
Well, let me just first start off by saying the juggle is real. It is not an easy feat. I've had to learn throughout my life how the balance just is not possible. And so I call myself a recovering people pleaser and a quasi recovering perfectionist because, I had it all, or so I thought I had it all on paper. I had, I was married with 2 boys and a thriving law career and the house and whatnot by the time I was 30. And it just was not sustainable. Everything I wanted to achieve wasn't. So it really took me one divorce, remarriage, a lot of soul searching to realize that we might check off all the boxes in our life, but it might be somebody else's boxes. And so really to have a sustainable, thriving life in everything that you want to do in self-love and self-care, you really have to prioritize what comes first. Like, I don't believe that you can balance everything in your life. I feel like sometimes the kids need more attention. Sometimes your profession needs more attention. So it really took me that realization so that I got out of burnout and to be able to sustain that. So that's the quick version.
Oh, I love that. I mean, and actually it's funny, that's a sort of quick answer, but so much packed in there because I've heard that you can do everything, but not all at once, right? So they tell us, oh, you could do anything you want. You could do everything you want, but not all at the same time. So that prioritizing is so important. And I think you really hit on an important part there too, Lisa, about permission, like giving ourselves permission to recognize that we don't have to be super women who are doing everything all at the same time. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. I am so glad you brought that up. So yeah, I feel like that for so long, there was this stigma that women had to do everything. You had to look good while you took care of the kids and ran the house and had a career and were able to go from, waking up, making breakfast, taking your kids to school, going to work, picking them up, going to the board meetings, making dinner, putting them to bed, and then squeezing in that little bit of self-care for yourself always came with like a big side of guilt, right? Because like, how can you have time for yourself? So I really do believe that stigma that we can do everything. Yeah, you are correct. We can do everything and have everything, just not at the same time. There are seasons in our life and we have to honor those and give ourselves grace for not having everything at the same time.
Yeah, beautiful. And you got to tell us about the Drama Diet. I love that name, is too juicy to resist. So tell us what it is, how you came to it.
Oh my goodness. So it's actually the title of a program I've done and also the title of the book that I'm currently finishing. It came up probably in about 2013, 2014, like no joke. I was a complete drama magnet my whole life. I had drama following me. And I didn't realize at the time that a lot of it was self-created drama because I felt like I had to be everything for everyone, which left very little time for myself. And I had to be everyone's therapist. And that took on a lot of emotions for me. And I didn't know how to get the drama out of my life. And I had a coworker who would always say to me, what's the drama of the day? Because there was always some drama. And it was really, right. It was really soul sucking. And so I really said, I wish there was a diet to get rid of drama. And it took basically going through my own stuff to realize that it can happen because I've been through the dark side and went through and got out the other side. And I'm like, wow, I really don't have drama in my life. Or rather, the drama is always there. We just don't have to engage with the drama. And that was a big turning point for me.
Fantastic. So what are some of your tips on that? Because I suspect that most of our listeners and viewers out there probably had issues with drama in their life. I know I am guilty as charged. So what are some of your hot tips on how do we reduce that drama in our life?
Well, first of all, I always say do a guilt drop, get rid of the guilt. It's such a wasted emotion. Guilt was my middle name, and I'll tell you, it serves no one. So as far as the drama, there's two elements to it. There's the internal drama of the self-sabotaging thoughts, the limiting beliefs, the negative self-talk, that mind chatter that like keeps us up in the middle of the night. Then there's that external drama of other people's opinions and the energy vampires that suck your time and drain your energy. So in very quickly, I have a 3D formula where I say, first, you have to disrupt the drama. I put up my hand. Then you have to deflate the drama. Then you have to detox the drama and flick it away. And I really go into that in my book, but that's short and the long of it. You really have to stop it, take the air out of it and then get rid of it.
That's fantastic. And I'd love, and again, you don't, not to give away all the tips in your book, but if you could go just a step deeper on that, because that is a gorgeous template, Lisa. I love that. And how do you do that 3D approach when I find, at least as women in particular, we tend to seek our validation externally and instead of internally, right? I mean, we're always looking for that external, that, we're afraid of that judgment. We're always seeking it. So how do you end up doing that sort of, deflate and detox when you're coming from that perspective? How do you shift out of that mindset, I guess?
Okay, for somebody who shamelessly would always seek other people's approval, I always say I would hand over my worth to other people to validate on a rose gold platter, like, here, validate me, validate me. Now I say save those validations for parking tickets, because I'll give an example. As far as like waiting for other people to validate you, the number one thing you have to do is realize your self-worth, and the self-worth starts with the internal drama of what we tell ourselves. And so in order to stop the thought, I think about this, because our minds, or at least my mind, was racing round and round and round like a carousel. And so imagine like you have a carousel of thoughts looping around your mind. And then on the carousel, you've got these horses, and the horses go up and down, right? Like on a carousel. So the emotions, so the thoughts are the carousel going round and round. The emotions are the horses going up and down. Depending on your thought, it'll trigger an emotional response. So either you have a high vibrating emotion that makes you feel good, or a lower one. And so I say, you've got to put like a cog in the wheel. You've got to like first stop the thought. And in order to stop the thought, the first step is awareness. And if you're aware that you're having the thought, you can do many things. And just, you can ask yourself, is it true? You can reach for a better feeling thought. There's just a lot of things that you can do with that. And to change your emotions, you've got to move that energy, because all emotions are really energy in motion. It's emotion. So the E is for energy. And so when we think a thought and it has a response of an emotion, that physical emotion runs through your body and you feel it as energy. It's only supposed to last in your body 90 seconds. And so if you can really appreciate it for 90 seconds and know after that you're the one sustaining that emotion, you really can just flick it away. It doesn't belong to you anymore. It's a very short version of it.
That is super powerful. And I love that you're talking about the power of thoughts, because I think it's the Cleveland Clinic. It said the average person has up to 60,000 thoughts a day, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% of them are negative. And of those, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% repeat. I mean, the destructive power of that. But the beauty is you can flip that as well. And if we start getting aware of having those thoughts becoming more positive and recycling that positive energy, think of the power of that. Now, I know you're a big advocate for self-love, so I'd love if you could share with us what are some of the key ways that you suggest we can do that, right? It doesn't come naturally, I think, for a lot of people, and women in particular, for a whole host of reasons of conditioning. So what are some key ways you tell us we can get that much needed self-love going?
Oh yeah, especially for a lot of women, self-love comes with a component of selfishness, but I've really learned and experienced that self-love is not just essential. We're actually depriving. When we don't give ourselves self-love, it's actually self-deprivation, because we're not just depriving ourselves of the care and nurturing that we so deserve, we're depriving other people around us, because when we don't fill up our own cups, we might take it out on other people around us, and we are not going to be there for other people around us. So we think we're doing them a favor. We're actually doing them a disservice and us a disservice. And so what I really try to tell people with busy lives is you don't have to schedule like a chunk out of your day. You could do it piecemeal. Like I say, give yourself a daily retreat. Like you don't have to wait. Like I used to feel like I was crawling to the weekend of exhaustion and just burnout from fatigue. And now I'm like, you can fill it up throughout your day. Schedule 10 minutes here for a cup of coffee, 20 minutes there for a walk around the block, 15 minutes for breath, like little things. And what I actually do is I put it in my phone. So I know I give myself that permission, just like I have that meeting at 1 o'clock, I have that walk around the block at 3 o'clock. So there's certain things that we can do and make sure that we fill up our cups throughout the day. Because at the end of the day, we're the one responsible for our own self-care, not anybody else. Nobody's going to do it for us. So we've got to give ourselves that permission.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that about the 15 minutes or the 20-minute block, because so often we're caught on that hamster wheel of to do. And we're like, I don't have time. I don't have time. I can't find time. And the irony is when you make the time, even for those 15-minute, 10-minute breathing, as you say, you become infinitely more productive and focused, and you actually end up getting more time in your day, or at least more productive time. That's been my experience. How about you?
Oh, 1,000%. I don't multitask anymore. I thought that was being productive. It's actually not, because you're not giving it enough attention and you're like going to mess up and deprive yourself of certain things. When you're really mindful in what you do and you give yourself that time, it does open up more space for you. And there is time for everything, right? So there's another thing that I do. I say, every day, write down 3 things that you need to do, because that's to move your life forward or your profession forward. 3 things you want to do that are self-care, and then 3 things you have to do. And usually those 3 things you have to do are because other people expect them from you.
Yes.
You can cross them off your list.
Yeah. Yeah, so important that they're doing that time audit. And I find if for most people, with a lot of my clients, I do these time audit where I have them track where all of their time goes for a week. And then at the end, see where most of your time is going. And it's normally never for the things we would say are priorities, but take a look at where you're spending your time, the stuff, how much of that do you love to do, put it in columns, things you don't mind doing, and things that you actually don't enjoy doing. And then find a way to get those things you don't like doing and eliminate, delegate, automate, get them off that list. I mean, it just, so I love that idea. And also when you were saying about that, that it struck me about modeling, right? Not only is it that we need to fill our tank up so we can be the best version of ourselves, but it often strikes me, what are we modeling for other young women or for the other young men out there? If we constantly are martyring ourselves and saying, I don't have time, and sacrificing that, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that perspective.
Oh, 1,000%. From my experience, when I thought that if I was doing everything, I would get like accolades. Oh, she's doing everything. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. They're like, that's nice. We didn't ask you to do everything. And they would go on and do things in their life. And I'm like, why am I killing myself here? Like, because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that if we don't do everything, we're less than, and we have to change that stigma. We really are enough as we are.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And we end up sending the message to them that, hey, for all the young women, you know what, your time's never going to be as important as any men in your life. And we're constantly coming from a place of service and never filling our own tank. And I love that you talked about that multitasking, because I always prided myself, I confess, on being a great multitasker. And I just finished Gary Keller's book, That One Thing. And he posits there's no such thing as multitasking, because as you so beautifully said, you're actually not giving your full attention. And if you want to be more productive and really move the dial to get towards those things you want, you pick the one thing that's the most important thing right now to move the dial, and you focus your energy on that one thing. So I would love, if you're comfortable sharing your experience as a woman negotiating in predominantly male worlds. Any advice you have or any experiences you want to share about that?
Oh yeah, especially in the legal community. And I started out very young I was an attorney by the time I was 24, and many years ago. I'm not going to age myself right now, but I was definitely the one that was not always acknowledged in the quote unquote boardroom or the courtroom, or, oh, you must be starting out 10 years into the profession. So I kind of turned it around and used it as like flying under the radar and kind of like the ace in my pocket. Like they weren't expecting things from me because they expected a certain thing. And I quickly realized that, it definitely was a boys' club a lot of the time, but it didn't mean that we had to keep our mouths shut. So I just kept opening my mouth and kept going. And kept going and just, you know, really advocate for women to just don't ever feel that intimidation if you're the only one wearing a skirt in the room.
Yeah, so good. I love that. And women tend to be, I find at least, more likely to shy away from negotiating generally for a host of reasons, you know, many tied to social conditioning, but even more so in advocating for themselves. So do you have any advice for women who fall into that category?
That was me. I could advocate for everybody else but myself. It took me 4 decades to learn how to use the voice for myself. And I say your voice is worth it, and do it. And you're the most important person in your life. You really are. Like, it's not a selfish thing. Like, if you're not 100% standing up for yourself, nobody's ever going to stand up for you the way that you stand up for yourself, because you know inherently what you really need and want.
Yeah. So nice. Yeah. And yeah, I think you really hit on something there a minute ago as well, when you're talking about that being underestimated. That can be a huge advantage if you're aware of it and use it with intention, as you say, flying under the radar. Can you think of any examples where you were able to sort of do that to your benefit? Not to put you on the spot.
Oh, let me think if I can think of something. Just I think I just never I mean, God, I once got asked out in the middle of a trial from a defense attorney. That was really in the middle of a trial.
Nice.
It's like, no. And not that I used that to my advantage, but I just realized that I'm sorry, I can't think of anything specific on this. I just know that I never, if a male attorney says something that was chauvinistic to me, which they have, I just sort of rose above it, said my piece, and didn't let it affect me. I never got embarrassed or intimidated. I think I just used that as a superpower and used it as fuel and said, wow, maybe that's their thought. You know, they don't really know me. I'm going to turn this around and, you know, just sort of step up my game.
So good. That goes back to that internal versus external, and that's taking it to another layer, another level. At least I love that, you know, if somebody's making inappropriate, overt, you know, sexist comments, you know, challenging them directly on it can actually be less powerful sometimes than just rising above that. And when you have an unshakable belief in your own value, it's water off a duck's back. That's their issue, not yours. That's such great advice. And what advice or tips would you have for women negotiating with bullies or people who have more power than them?
Nobody has more power than you. They just think that they do. So
Okay.
embody the feeling that you are at their level or above them, and start from that level.
Yeah, that's so great. And what role have you found that emotion plays in emotions? You hear so much conflicting opinions. Some people are like, emotion has no place in negotiations. And other people are like, no, I mean, knowing your deep why and bringing that emotion can be super powerful. What's been your experience or your advice about what role emotion can play in negotiations and or should play in negotiations?
Well, in our particular field, I practice personal injury plaintiff's law, and we deal with a lot of heavy emotional cases. I deal with a lot of sexual abuse cases, wrongful death, really, really heavy stuff, brain injuries. And there always is an element of compassion, obviously, because there's always an element of emotional distress. But as far as negotiation, I can't not wear my heart on my sleeve sometimes, because I really understand my clients. So there does have to be that component of emotion, knowing that, you know, in civil law, the only way you get compensated is through money. And it sounds a little heartless, but that's how you compensate somebody for loss or for trauma. So there has to be some sort of emotion involved, because there's somebody that's emotionally traumatized.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I assume so long as you can keep the clarity of not letting yourself bring the emotion of that to be able to up your game, but don't let your emotion get in the way of having the clarity you need for the outcomes. Would that be fair?
Oh, 100%. I just settled a case yesterday dealing with something. And the thing is, you know, not that we get jaded by seeing all this stuff. Like, we do get a little desensitized from seeing horrible pictures and knowing situations. And, you know, when the other side doesn't always come back with a number that our client feels they deserve, I always say to the client, they're doing the best that they can, and they're just doing their job. And so I definitely compartmentalize that and say, please, I know it's hard not to take it personally. They're just doing their job. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You
And what
see-
role have you found that prepper, especially given that sort of, civil litigation with injuries can be, as you say, a high emotion, a highly factually based. So what role does preparation play in effective negotiation in your view?
Preparation is everything. I know the case like the back of my hand. I live it, I breathe it. I'm very close to my clients. I give them my cell phone number, which maybe is not a good thing to do. So I really feel like I know them
Yeah.
very well. And so when I go in to negotiate on their behalf, I'm not just reading a script or reading from their medical records. I really know how this has ingrained their life and affected them on a daily basis.
Yeah. And would you say the same thing applies, Lisa, in your personal I think people often don't even think of their personal relationships as negotiations, but I definitely do. I don't know what your views on that are. And if you do agree, would you say that preparation is important in those negotiations as well, those personal ones?
Oh yeah, especially when I didn't draw my boundaries for, like I said, for 40 plus years, because and going through a divorce and just literally the lines were so blurred, I wouldn't negotiate for, I didn't negotiate for myself. And then when I was younger and I did, nobody would believe me in my personal life because I never opened up my voice. And when I did, they're like, oh, this can't be you, when I finally stepped into it. And so it took a minute for them to realize, wow, she really means business. So I would tell the listeners, start early so that you really could build up that confidence, because it's harder to negotiate. I learned that too late in life, but hopefully I can spare others from, that's one of the reasons I'm writing the book, so that I could spare others from following that long, slow, painful route like I did. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, actually. And how do you find you advocate to get what you want and need for your clients while remaining true to yourself, like not feeling the need to tap into that more masculine definition of success, which often in negotiations generally, in our legal profession in particular, I think is based on that very adversarial kind of process. What are your views to that?
Yeah, I mean, I really try to bring our clients as a human being rather than as just a figure, as a party to the case. I really try to humanize them. I feel that really, this is not just a number. A lot of times we're dealing with insurance companies and there's a formula, but you're dealing with a real person with real, and every case is different. So every case has a different set of circumstances and a different outcome. And so, yeah, I just really try to humanize them.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice, both personally and professionally, like not just in the legal sphere, but it's being able to bring empathy to the table, both in terms of humanizing your client or your position, but also understanding the perspective of the other party as well. And I think that often gets overlooked in our very result-oriented kind of society these days. So I love that approach. I think that's beautiful. And what's your experience? What do you think are the key reasons that negotiations fail? And not just in law, I would say generally, if you see any sort of consistent themes.
So I'm a big proponent of mediating cases, and the best mediations, they say, are when both parties walk away feeling like they each gave in too much. So I think a lot of times negotiations fail because people have either they're not offering enough or they're harboring something more. Like sometimes people want an emotional, like sometimes our clients want an apology as well. Like it's not always monetary. There's always like some kind of attachment to it. So there's something that they're not letting go of, and we've got to dig deep to the root of that to figure out what exactly that is.
That's so good. Like I always call that the deep why, but I like that idea too. Get to the root of it, right? I usually use that iceberg analogy about those unstated needs below the surface of the wild, but the root actually is almost a more powerful analogy, because you almost have to pull it. It's like you're excavating all the dirt around from it and getting that tug, and it's coming reluctantly to really find out what are the real drivers behind the negotiation. And when we don't do that, I think you're right. That's probably one of the number one causes negotiations fail. People either walk away from a deal that could have really worked, or end up going past the point where the deal makes sense for them anymore as well. So what do you think are the key skills or, the hallmarks of a great negotiator in your experience?
I think a great negotiator has to know why they're negotiating on behalf of their client. What exactly is that their client wants? I think the negotiator also has to take a step back and see the whole thing as a picture and see what does their client really deserve realistically, and not coming from an emotional component from the client. And I think a really good negotiator has to not come from a place of desperation.
Mm.
Know that there's always tomorrow if it doesn't settle today.
Oh, yeah. So good. That attachment piece, right? I mean, you see that over and over again. And again, I think both personally and professionally, where people get so attached to a particular result that they bargain past the point where it makes sense. And much to their detriment. I think a good negotiator will always know when to walk away and not be so attached to that result that they're not worried that there's something else around the corner that's going to better serve them. That's really great advice. I can't believe how much we have packed into this. You and I both speak quickly, so the value for our listeners out there, you get double.
Sorry about that. I realize I know I speak very fast.
Oh, you and I both. I think it's great. We've covered so much ground. And I always like to end, Lisa, by asking, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've had in your life? And this doesn't have to be about negotiations or law, just one of those aha moments that shifted how you look at the world.
Ooh, that's a good one. A mindset shift is, I think for me personally, I've learned how to forgive and let things go from the past so I don't carry it with me.
Yeah.
That has been a big one.
And would you include with that forgiving yourself, Lisa? As you said that, it was just like kind of struck me in the core, because I think we often carry baggage where we're angry and disappointed in ourselves. And if we don't forgive ourselves first, we have little hope of forgiving others.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also not having the regret of having not done something the way you wanted it to do, that can go professionally and personally as well. Not beating yourself up and letting it go.
Yeah, beautiful. So tell us about your book. When's that coming out?
Oh God, that a lot later than I expected it. I'm in the throes of it now. So I'm hoping it'll be done hopefully by the summer. So that is my goal.
Fantastic. And it's called The Drama Diet. Is that?
Yes. And I've worked on card decks as well that will go along with it.
Oh, very cool. Well, we'll have to make sure to have you back when you're ready to launch the book, because it sounds like it's a real winner. So, and for everybody out there, make sure if you want to learn more about Lisa Stuart, you can check out on Instagram or Facebook at Lisa Stuart Official, or check out Lisa on Clubhouse at Lisa Stuart as well. So thanks so much for being with us, Lisa, and sharing just a wealth of knowledge and information about how to negotiate a better life.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for having me on. It's been amazing.
And I am sure for everybody out there that you got lots of value from this episode. And again, we both talked quickly, so maybe even rewatch it and come back with a notepad and grab lots out of it. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with anyone that you think could get some value from this message. And let's face it, since all of life is a negotiation, who couldn't get some value from this messaging? And make sure to join our Women on Purpose community at facebook.com/groups, Women on Purpose community. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Take care until next time.